thank you all for being here. If you want to get closer, it's fine. It's really up to you. Just it's kind of like a small group, so and we'd love to hear from you. I think it would be great to take advantage of the fact that we're just a few of us, and just hear about your experiences with educational distribution, if any, and why you're here. We're very excited. My name is Brenda. This is Theo Rigby.
My name's Theo.
And we're both filmmakers, and we're both part of New Day Films, which is a filmmaker-run distribution co-op that's been around for over 50 years. And we're very excited to share our experiences with that model of education, but we're also happy to talk about the educational distribution market at large, at least specifically in the US, and what our experiences have been, and to hear about why you're interested in that, and your background. So maybe, how about if before we get started, maybe everyone can take a turn introducing yourselves and sharing why you're here.
Okay, my name is Eve Ma, and I have a little LLC called Audio Productions, and I made a whole bunch of films. One of them has been on PBS. The one that I'm sort of done with now is going to be on PBS in the fall of 2023. Focuses on music, dance, and the arts and cross-cultural communication. So I have flamenco, I have Peruvian, I have Yoruba, and things of that sort.
My name is Ellen Moore, and I just finished a documentary about childhood in a larger sense, but it's really focused on a summer camp for kids, and it covers a 30-year period approximately. But it's really, I know the teachers that have seen it all say teachers should see this because it deals a lot with empowering children. It's kind of a Reggio Emilia approach to education. That's the model that the school the camp came from uses. And so, anyway, so I'm very interested in trying to get it to teachers or people studying education.
Sorry, where are you in production on it?
I'm done. I finished in January this year, and it's been in 2 festivals.
My name is Tim Polo. I'm working on my first feature documentary about to start dating about a month. And I've had a ton of experience with educational sales and in-person presentations. That is a mandatory on site. And I'm here today because, I'm always trying to see what the latest developments are. When I started doing this was back in 2010, so DStro was about distribution, DVDs more than streaming. And then the next few years I started doing streaming and downloads. And now I've seen years, been 4 years since my last completed film. So even though I'm still, 1.5, 2 years away from finishing this one, I just want to get a sense of, what the landscape is like now. By the way, I'm good friends with Pat Ferrero. You probably know.
Thank you.
I'm a Sword, filmmaker, kind of similar situation to you. Came out 2016, working on another one, and want to know what the changes are since then. I think a lot of things have changed, especially on the product.
Everyone, my name is Latasha. Thanks for the panel today. I'm actually narrative film. My documentary, but I did a narrative film a few years ago based on some work my mom does around the violence around them, and I just wanted to figure out what to do with it, festivals and things. But she works as a director of training for people who are trying to start similar programs that interfere with gun violence in different cities, and I wanted to figure out how to use that in their trainings, or what to do with it, how to support her with it. Sometimes she screens the film, when she goes to the training, but she just left her career at 25 years, and she's just going to be focusing more on training. So I just want to figure out how to help her with or how it can be used with her.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. And yeah, we both make documentaries. I'm going to be talking about documentaries, but everything that we're talking about goes to kind of narrative films as well. And in New Day Films, we most often all talk about documentaries, but actually there are a bunch of narrative films, and some of them are some of like the top selling films as well. So yeah, I just wanted to put that caveat because we're going to talk a lot about the doc world, but in terms of educational, narrative films can work really well. Yeah, so I think Brenda's going to start us off with a little like overview, and then we'll dive into a couple case studies, dive into a case study of one of my films, take a break, do a case study of Brenda's film, and then break out into small groups. It's great to hear that every single one of you has films that you're either working on or are out and being distributed or almost out. So hopefully this will be really helpful. And towards the end, we can actually workshop one or multiple of those films just to brainstorm and kind of get the juices flowing of what the possibilities could be kind of in the educational landscape.
Great question. So is your focus today mainly within the context of New Day Films?
So we thought, since the New Day Films is like a co-op, it's a co-op, it's a cooperative, and we are both in New Day, but I don't think anyone here is. So we wanted to make it like, yes, we'll talk a little bit about New Day and the model, but we really tried to design the presentation to be broad and general. And if you never, join New Day or don't even know anyone in New Day, then hopefully you'll get a lot out of it as well. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
So just starting with an overview, which a lot of you sounds like are familiar with. And again, we're focusing more on US and Canada, and we also mentioned Australia, the UK, and Europe, but really US is by far the most profitable market, the best organized in terms of educational distribution. Usually filmmakers get, colleges, educators just get better, larger budgets for that than in the rest of the world. I don't know if any of you has had any distribution deals in Europe or in other countries outside of the US, but normally prices are a lot lower. And then when it comes to other parts of the world, like Latin America, Africa, parts of Asia, that's pretty much a non-existent market, or very inaccessible to a lot of these educational spaces. And just kind of to see the split of where that the kind of the sales or the profits or the opportunities are. A lot of them are really focused on universities and colleges, approximately 90%. So at least for us, in our experiences, the majority of our films are purchased and seen within that context. But there's also the other 10, obviously it's like K-12. And normally that has like different aspects to that, because we have some filmmakers in New Day that work with school districts. And so when a school district has an opportunity, they do have a budget, and sometimes they purchase films and the curriculum, and then they share it across all of their schools. So that is, it depends on every topic, but that's a good market too. That's definitely there. But overall, a lot of the market is concentrated in colleges and universities. And of course, there's nonprofits, there are public libraries and corporations, and so we can talk about public libraries as well, and we will, but just kind of a little bit about public libraries. A lot of them are subscription-based to places like Canopy or Alexander Street Press and just other streaming services that normally are, people have access to, not necessarily unlimited, depends on every library, but they have a certain amount of streaming opportunities they can have per month with their library card, but filmmakers normally don't get a lot of money from that, usually about $1, $2 per view. So if it's a good deal, but sometimes it's just cents.
I could also add to this, like this is kind of like where like the money lie, like maybe like 90% of like the funding might be in like higher education, really consolidated in like a very small number of very rich universities that have big budgets for media acquisition, right? And have many libraries. So there's like an art library, there's a law library, there's like multiple libraries at the school. With that being said, like your whole educational distribution plan could be within the 10%, you know? Like educational distribution could be really niche, like the trainings you're talking about. Like you could roll out a distribution campaign that went to, 250 of those trainings, and you could sell a lot of films and licenses and DVDs, whatever the format is, and have it be very profitable. There's a filmmaker, Jean-Michel Desard, who has this film called I Learn America that's in New Day, and it's always like one of the top sellers. It's about five immigrant young people, high school students in New York City, and it's like them coming to the US and kind of finding their way as immigrants. His whole distribution campaign, or most of it, is with school districts. He's just like, that film is just plugged in to so many school districts across the entire country, and no matter what format it is, whether it was like DVD when the film first came out, that translated to Canopy now that it's like digital, or like individual licenses. So I'm not sure how much, I don't think he does much higher ed sales, although that's where a lot of the budget is. And he's made a really successful campaign and had a lot of impact.
Yeah, and there's also corporations. Corporations sometimes also get a budget for trainings, and so they get also a budget assigned for media acquisition. So we also have a film that's very successful in New Day, Ellen Bruno's film about it's called Split, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's about kind of divorce, but through the kid's perspective. And there are a lot of law firms that have required training hours per year. And so part of it is media acquisition, and then a lot of law firms acquire that film, and they have to complete the study guide as part of their required hours of training. So that's a big market of that film. It's a lot of law firms that just get the film for the purpose of those trainings, those required trainings. So.
Yeah, I think that goes to, don't want to get off base, but that goes to like, well, a lot of what we're talking about is figuring out how to get your films. Like if you put on an event do like a one-off event, we've probably all done it, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to put together an event like this, and like just to do like one thing for one time. For educational, like if you can figure out how to plug your film in where it's just going to be cycled through again and again and again in the same curriculum, or it's like required viewing in a training. I mean, that's amazing, right? Like people are actually required to watch Alan's film. And that just means, one, the film is doing the work out in the world and it's getting seen and used. And then two, like that's, a cyclical kind of income.
So yeah, and just to kind of go on with that, as much as we're talking about sustainability and being paid fairly for your film and distributing your film, this is also about impact. So we're kind of going back and forth with why educational distribution is such an important market. Like we were saying, right, it makes our career sustainable. A lot of us work for so many years in a film. A lot of us, nobody knows the perfect roadmap to funding our films, and we want to pay everybody fairly, and sometimes the order of these things things don't necessarily happen in the order we wish it happened. But then once the film is out there in the world, all that effort you put on, all those contacts you made, all those connections, you can maximize that, and you know exactly who can see your film, who could benefit from watching your film, who could really take your film where it needs to go. That generally is people who you connected to, or you were making the film, who would be still working on a certain cause, whether you made the film or not. So they will continue to push for whatever is happening, the topics of your film, and you are you serve that, you get that purpose beyond awards and all the festival circuit and everything that kind of like the pipeline of filmmaking, your film has another life after all of that. So that's really important. You get to audiences that are traditionally not going to be in film festivals, right? It's nice to have that. It's nice to go to film festivals, but ultimately, when we're making our films, sometimes that's not the people that get to see it on the big screen. And that's really, I mean, it's amazing. I know some of you share that you have distributed through educational, and I'm sure you've had that experience that, or it's just so rewarding to get the experience of knowing that, you know, somebody you never expected or an organization you never expected show your film and that people were excited about it and they want to know more and they want to get involved, or just different new ways in which people are using your film that you could have never imagined. So it opens up opportunities for policymakers, other age groups to see the film. I know that for me, the film that I'm distributing with New J is kind of introducing something to a new generation. We will talk about the film, but it deals with DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. When it was happening, like it documented the moment it was happening. And so a lot of kids who are now starting college are just looking back and being introduced of like, what were the issues? What was happening back then? And it also provides an opportunity for people to discuss these topics in safe spaces, right? Because sometimes when we're in festivals, we're out there and people really don't feel comfortable sharing certain things or don't have the tools, the vocabulary, the spaces to talk about these things. And so when you put your film out there in the educational market, you are allowing leadership and other people to really plan events around that serve their communities in relevant ways. And also you build an audience for your future films, right? It's nice to have ongoing relationships with professors, for example, or you go to Q&As and it's usually like, what are you working on? What are you doing right now? And then it's another opportunity to tell people like, especially if you're working on something along the lines or something similar in style or topic, it's amazing how we continue to work with the same professors and the same community organizers as we keep working on new films. So it's nice.
Yeah, it's incredible how when we talk a lot about sustainability for this educational distribution piece, how it's like something that can be like part of, if you don't have like a real job, as I say, like if you don't have like a full-time income, it can be part of all of the different kind of side hustles that come together. And over time, you get those like champions of your work, right? If you make multiple films and you do a screening and like, oh my God, it's a Theo film. What's your next film? And then it's amazing how people really remember. Like they really remember. You might just be like one in a kind of like just kind of like a flurry of many screenings of a film or a campaign or screening campaign that you'll do. But I have some professors in random places in the country that are just trying to find ways to like put together a budget to make a screening to like bring me and the people in the film, like when the film's going to be done. Like they'll get in touch a year before. Be like, is it done yet? Is it done yet? I want to bring you out. Like what's scheduled for, spring 2024? I'm like, okay. And I think it's just one other piece I'll say is just like hearing Brenda talk and just thinking for a moment on the educational piece is that it's really like the part of the whole distribution pie that we really have the most agency over. Like we have the most control over. You have a goal, you want to like change policy, you want to like build community, build capacity of organizations, like whatever work you want to do, you can really kind of like cater an educational campaign around that. And in New Day, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but it's, it's member driven, like we're doing all the work, we're very, very hands-on. You can also, sign a contract with an educational distribution company that will take over, 60 or 70% of the profits and will plug it into their promotion and marketing system. And that is totally, that's like actually mainly usually what happens, right? And they're going to go to the same market that we're talking about, but the filmmaker would be very hands off and like not have that much control over it. which is totally great and works well for a lot of people. And what we're talking about here in this presentation is probably like a much more kind of like hands-on DIY, kind of build your own campaign and like really figure out like who are your customers and who is your audience and who has the budget to purchase your film and try to get to them. You ready? Cool.
Yes, and someone was referring to that transition, right, from DVD and theatrical and all of that, and now we're moving into streaming and just social media content creation with like really tiny bits to talk about social issue, and just there's just so much happening, so many things continue to change. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities in the educational market. And in terms of how you can reach your audiences, just because of all those changes, but that's also a challenge, right? This is like, how am I gonna keep up? A lot of people, maybe like 4 years ago, came out with a film and said, why not? Let's make DVDs. And many are probably regretting making like, hundreds of DVDs because no one's buying DVDs. Like a lot of people are still, actually, a lot of public libraries do buy DVDs. So we're actually often surprised that people are still buying them. But generally, streaming is sort of the way to go, right? And then a lot of, as things keep changing, there used to be subscription-based, and now it seems like that might not be the route for a lot of the streamers to make it sustainable for them, because then there was a moment when, say, Canopy was subscription-based. So sometimes students would just watch a film for a certain amount of time and then just activate a license, but they really wouldn't be using the film a lot. And then Canopy was just paying filmmakers license after license after license, so that was just not sustainable. So now it's changing into, librarians have to request, professors have to request for librarians to ask get access to the streaming or pay for a license. So everything's changing. A lot of places offer life of file as well, so that institutions can keep their the file forever, basically, and just kind of like a DVD in a way that you just get to keep and play as much as you want. Yeah.
I see you have Canopy there, and obviously everyone's familiar with Canopy, but I think Midwest Tape also is now, I've had some people, some organizations say, we use Midwest Tape, and then you all mentioned Alexander Street. And I'm interested in that because I have a contract with Alexander Street, and I've been told to contact Midwest Tape in January, because Canopy says, go away! We don't want any more films.
Yeah, Canopy cannot take any more films. And then a lot of other spaces are merging as well. A lot of the previous streamers have been disappearing. So just the market continues to change.
Alexander Street is actually now ProQuest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, even since ProQuest is now even something else. I can't remember what.
It's really hard to keep up.
Fishing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. A lot of them have different deals with the filmmakers. It really depends on, the length of the film and also, the pool of the filmmaker as well, right? Some of the bigger names or just more widely known documentaries usually get to negotiate better deals for streaming licenses. But in the case of New Day, at least for now, every filmmaker that joins New Day automatically gets added to Canopy because of a contract that New Day has with Canopy right now. But but you're right, Canopy is not taking any films right now.
And then maybe, I don't know, just for those of you who might not be so familiar with Canopy, some people often refer to it as the Netflix of educational distribution. It's a website that streams thousands and thousands of films, a lot of fiction, a lot of documentary, and as a customer, you can kind of access it in a few ways. The universities and colleges I think they're scaling back from the PDA model actually, right? The PDA model is basically like student driven. So if I think it was 5 students click play and watch it for 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and then it would automatically trigger a license. So it was really interesting for us as like doing marketing and distribution because we can get in touch. I work a lot with immigrant folks and undocumented folks too, so I can get in touch with like a, like an undocumented student club on campus and say like, hey, are you interested in this film? And they pass it around, 5 of them watch it, and then like it clicks a license from that school, and then everybody at that school has access to that film for a year. They sell 1-year licenses. I believe for like $150 a pop for a 1-year license. So that's like the student kind of driven model, and then also just like a classic scenario where like a professor could go to the acquisition person or whoever buys films in their department and say, hey, I want Brenda's film, can you buy it? And then that person will look at it and click it and buy it. And then there's also the public library scenario that Brenda mentioned earlier, where Canopy is like accessible via public libraries, which is amazing. But then like from a revenue perspective for us, like we do, like filmmakers get like $1 or $2 every time someone watches it. And if you have a public library subscription, you can just log into your public library and then access Canopy that way. So yeah, and this isn't a Canopy presentation, but they have a huge market share and growing market share in the educational, space. There are many other streaming educational entities that are Canopy competitors. And with all this to say, like we have DIY distribution at the bottom, and maybe I'll be like the DIY guy today. But I think in all of this, like Canopy is great. If you can get it on there and be successful, awesome. Like Alexander Street, whatever, the other one you're talking about, if you can, get it on a platform, streaming to places in a successful way, amazing. I think the key to all of this, as is also the key to larger film distribution, is just like retaining your like ability to do what you want and have control over where your film goes. Like once you give your film to a large company, once you sign a contract with whoever it is, Canopy or Netflix or HBO or whoever it might be, you lose a lot of control, right? So if there's a way to like chop up the distribution of your film and retain control, at least in like pockets, in ways that you can like really do what you want with the film and be flexible in how it's kind of like your film gets out in the world. For me, at least, that's always been really key, and that means retaining rights, like when you have other distribution deals and doing, it's sometimes called like a carve out. So if you do like a deal with PBS, like if you had films on PBS before, retaining those educational rights. My last film that I'm going to show a little bit was with ITVS, which is like funded by Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS. Carve those educational rights out. If you sign an educational deal, carve out community screenings. Like, can I do a screening in churches? Even though you're going to take it and put it on Canopy, can I do churches and like still have that market? Keep some control over being able to show the film in the world in the way that you want to.
Can you tell us what the recommended rates are for streaming to schools, to libraries, to nonprofits, and individuals?
Yes, we're going to get to that in a little bit. We're definitely going to talk about the rates. Right.
I was just going to do a real fast comment. I always do non-exclusive contracts with all distributors.
Yeah, when I started with Canopy, it was 2010. They were just like a little boutique place where you could
Yes.
actually walk in and meet someone in San Francisco, and they were really nice. I have an Australian edition. They were all Australians, and they were just really nice people, and they've changed so much and become so corporatized. And what began as, I was thinking, 75% has dropped to just below 40, just below 50. And when we did the last negotiation, I said, either you grandfather in that this will not change in perpetuity, or I call. And they did. So that's kind of cool. So, if it's still a small fish, but it's nice. It's like quarterly, it's like $250, but it's something, you know. And at least hopefully a lot of that money won't change. But they definitely changed, you know. And I'm glad that in the last 13 years now, so many smaller or parallel possibilities of there is the Alexander, whatever they're called, hopefully they just won't be the ghost, what do you call it, the elephant in the room. They're always looking over.
No, and I think you're bringing something up that's really important. I think that the more that we get involved in this process of distribution, and particularly educational distribution, the more that we can advocate for things to, go continue, try to make it like more filmmaker centric, sorry, because with streamers, they're just, I mean, there's all this free educational media, all these other options that are out there. It's really hard to become sustainable in getting people paid fairly for their films.
But one thing they have always done, I don't know today, but when I last negotiated, which was about a year and a half ago, they still allow you to opt out at any time and to have to be non-exclusive. So yeah, we're still doing that, I think.
That's good.
Cool. So just wanted to do just a little case study and just talk about kind of this film getting out in the educational world. And I guess educational to me also is just, I don't feel like you could look at it as like higher education, 2-year and 4-year universities and colleges. But to me, it's more kind of like a catch-all for everything that's not like either like a TV deal or traditional broadcast like linear or streaming, and kind of like entails like community screenings as well, because that's, to me, that's all, whether a community organization or a church, say, or a faith group is gonna pay me to like license the film and like maybe buy the film, maybe not buy the film, or pay me to show the film and to speak about it, like the same as a university is. And it's just like a different community of people, whether it's under like the official kind of umbrella of academia or not. And each film is different. Waking Dream is a little bit, it's not a slam dunk educational. You wouldn't like look at the scenario of Waking Dream and be like, that's going to be perfect for educational. The main reason being that it was a YouTube series. Like it's a YouTube series. And when initially it was premiered on a YouTube channel, on a PBS owned YouTube channel called Indie Lens. And traditional wisdom says, like, if you put your movie on the internet, that is going to drastically cut into your educational sales, because teachers and students and everybody who wants to see your movie is not going to pay for your movie because it's already on the internet. And I think time and time again on New Day, like, we've seen examples where that's really not true. It can be, for sure, and like, but not entirely and not necessarily. So I just want to put that out there, that folks like a lot of times will look at the windows of their film and like when it comes out and what mode of distribution, and we'll kind of hold off on that like all accessible internet link until some degree of educational has been done or some degree of community screenings. And yeah, I'm usually, always like very open source and like just get the films as accessible as possible, get them out there, and like with the notion that will bring a bigger audience and bring other opportunities for the film to screen and for the film to like bring in revenue as well and just make it sustainable. So Waking Dream, as I said, is a ITVS funded short form series, actually. So it's 6 episodes. Each episode is like 9 minutes long, and it's following the lives of these 6 young people, all of whom have DACA permits. So I thought we could just like watch one episode, and then I'll get into a little bit of the story of how this film kind of got out in the world and in the educational space. This is like 9 minutes long.
I came to the United States when I was 2 months old and haven't been to Mexico since. I feel as American as anyone else would.
Let's check in about something. Who has heard all the news about DACA, if any? Okay. As most of you know, I'm undocumented. DACA gives me a work permit to be able to be in school and be your teacher. When that goes away, if I don't have a work permit, I technically can't be in front of you. What I can tell you is this. Y'all could be mad about everything that's happening in the world, but if we don't go out and do anything about it, nothing's gonna change. And you can't do anything about it until you get educated. We're gonna keep learning how to write, we're gonna keep learning how to read, and we're gonna keep learning how to speak. How many reading levels are we growing by the end of the year? 2 grade levels. Okay, let's get started. And he knew it was a song from his parents' youth.
The worst case scenario is like, I get sent back to Mexico. They have all my information. I didn't know if those were gonna be the last weeks of me teaching them.
From the moment that we were standing there in the Rio Grande, I knew that my mom was confronting all her fears. She doesn't know how to swim, but she was determined to give us a better future. The river and the wall became a symbol of my identity.
Antes de entrar, yo era un lucero de aurora. El río me fue apagando la llamarada naciente de mi boca diáfana, ahora cerrada, ahora foránea, ahora intrusa. Soy oscura, nací del agua y de la carne, pero mi canto hoy crece. Mi hambre de sol es insaciable y el próximo parto será de fuego.
Oye, qué bonita blusa.
Ya la orden.
Yo nunca les pregunté, ¿quieres ir a la universidad? ¿Quieres graduarte de algo? No, yo siempre les decía, la educación no es opcional. O sea, tienes que estudiar, tienes que hacerlo. And this is pluscuamperfecto. I would use it to memorize the verb tenses in English. So, was, were, do, did. The first year of middle school, I was like, I really want to be a university professor. And they're like, oh, you need a PhD. It just seemed like a crazy idea. 69 miles north from the border with Mexico. There's a checkpoint here. It is like a gate keeping undocumented immigrants in this area. After I got DACA, I was able to pass the checkpoint, like that checkpoint that had kept me here for 13 years. I was just like shaking, and my husband was like, you have a permit, nothing's gonna happen.
Thank you.
You're right.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
And I was able to go to the university. Right now, I only need a dissertation to receive my degree. I need to finish. I've been investing in this for years. If something drastic happens, I need to at least have my degree.
got a lot of memories in here. Prom. I didn't feel like I was an immigrant. I felt like I was the same. If we hadn't come in the US, we would have most likely died from poverty in the Philippines. My mom always told us, be grateful for America and to be grateful for this country. Kind of started making me like, oh, I want to be a Marine. I want to fight what's bad in the world. I asked my mom for our documents, and that's where she kind of gave me that look. Like when moms give you a look, you'll just know something bad was gonna happen. And then she said, well, we're technically not supposed to be here. When I found out that I was undocumented for like 2 weeks, I was speechless. Like, I don't even know if I can go to college. I don't even know if I can go to work. So I was very grateful when DACA came out. Our coworker told us that, dude, what are you doing? They're accepting DACA now for the Army. The word Mavni came out. I, James Emmanuel Madrid, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. In the Army slang, we wanted to go full hua. That's what they call it. We were full hua soldiers. I wanna be an airborne ranger, live a life of guts and danger, live a life of guts and danger, airborne ranger, guts and danger. Come on, 20 more, you got 50 seconds, man. Go. You want to show your drill sergeant that you're capable of being the first, but at the same time, you don't leave anyone behind. In the Soldier's Creed, I'll never leave a fallen comrade behind. This is a way for us to give back, to protect the people that I grew up, the people that welcomed us. I'm here willing to lay down my life for the people of the United States.
I'm traveling to Mexico. The last time I saw my dad was when I was in 5th grade. I was about 10 years old. But once I crossed that line, I may never come back.
So just after watching that one episode, what are some just like super quick ideas for like where could this film fit in the educational market?
High school.
High school? Great.
That's why undocumented kids are worried about college.
Mm-hmm. Like young high school because they're young undocumented people who are making the transition to college.
That's when the issue arises, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think in most cases, when we get to the college age.
Yeah, and almost all graduating undocumented high schoolers right now don't have DACA and don't qualify to apply. So that's a whole different scenario than the people in the film are in. Yeah, high school. Okay, what else?
Student groups in college.
Student groups in college. Sure, great. What else? It helps to have multiple characters because it's like they each have something going on.
Yeah.
Shelters?
Shelters?
I don't know that shelters have any money to pay for films, but there are undocumented people in shelters that might find it involved and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Educators?
Yeah. Educators, yeah. So there's there's also the legal and political piece about like the actual DACA legislation, which intentionally I didn't really go into because that's not what the film is about. But there's, a whole, this is, kind of like putting the human face is like the cliche, but like showing like the real effect of policy and legislation on actual people living their lives. And you know, each person in this series has a certain degree of uncertainty or limbo or danger to them and their families because of their lack of permanent legal status. So that can apply to a whole range of different communities and different kind of sections of academia as well. So I just wanted to show you know, having a website for your movie is a thing. That if you're going to put a movie out there in the world, usually you have some sort of like a traditional website, even if you just are rolling with like mainly social media and don't have like a very robust website. Just wanted to show kind of like what is out there online. A trailer, which I won't show you, but you know, most people, the overwhelming majority of people are going to watch the trailer for your movie and are not going to watch your actual movie, right? Many more people will watch the trailer. So that's a really important part. I'd say, you know, put the time into it. It's like your best promotional piece that you could possibly have. So right below the trailer, you know, I have these like two options, right? Stream Waking Dream on Canopy, and that will go drive people like directly to the Waking Dream Canopy page, which if you are on a university campus, like on their IP address or logged in through their system, and your university has purchased it, you'll be able to watch it right here. If you haven't, then if you click watch now, and that'll kick you to a page to either buy it or request it. If the school has the PDA model where like, you know, people, you know, you'll probably have instant access to it. And then if they click and watch, that'll count as one click. So Canopy is one piece. And then, you know, they have this more general kind of Get Waking Dream for the classroom, which brings you to the New Day Films page for Waking Dream. We'll get into this a bit later, but maybe this is a good place to just chat briefly now. Is like a New Day, there's like a bunch of different purchasing items. You asked about prices, Ken. So a New Day, like you can buy either a DVD or a stream, and for each entity, whether it's a college or university or corporation, a community group, a K-12 school, a public library, you can set your own, like I set these prices. There was no like list or no dictum from New Day saying like, you must sell your film for this. There are definitely suggestions for sure, because you don't want to like undercut the product, right? And sell a DVD to a big university, to like Yale for, you know, $50 when the going rate is around like 250 to 350. I will say these prices are probably on the lower side of most. This is a little bit of a shorter film, and
you got your public library, because Canopy does it for like $1.99 public libraries.
Well, so that's a different kind of public library scenario with Canopy, is that they have a deal with public libraries. So yeah, but this is, you know, and you know, not many public libraries buy the DVD of this film for $130.
Actually, you might be surprised. That's public libraries is still a big revenue for DVDs, just because a lot of people don't even know they can stream stuff with their public library cards. And you know, there's a lot of people like recent immigrants or people who don't have like access to certain technologies or you know, reliable internet access, that do get all their DVDs for just entertainment or education there at the library. So yeah.
And what do you mean by streaming like file?
Yeah, so
does it mean in perpetuity, or does it mean to get a file, their own file?
So New Day has built, I talked a little bit about kind of like retaining control over your film and distribution, and New Day has built our own like streaming platform to sell streams. Now, you don't need to be part of New Day to sell your own streams, right? There are a lot of different ways you can do this. And you know, the most simple way being like having a password protected link of your movie, and you know, someone paying you a certain amount of money for you to give them, you know, that link or a unique link. And then there are a lot of other like OTT ways to, to sell your film as one-offs to different people for different prices. New Day has their own platform, and I think you can opt into some of these length of file kind of licenses, but I think you got to do like at least one, or at least like the 1 year. But it really kind of behooves you to have a bunch of different options, right? And in a way, you're trusting people, like you're trusting, a big university to not go in and pay for the 14-day license and then do a huge event and invite a bunch of people and not tell you about it and only pay $49. So I think that rarely happens.
In many ways, it's kind of like an honor system, which, also allows for people to get very creative when there is a need to get access to them.
So I have two questions. This is off your website, so is all of that direct from you, or is it through New Day?
Yeah, so this is New Day's website that I'm on right now. Oh, so I clicked on the link from my website to New Day. So this is New Day's website, and the great thing about streaming licenses is that they expire, right? The great thing for us theoretically, and that if someone buys a 1 year, then they plug your film into something cyclical, as I mentioned before, then they would continue to license it again and again and again. So that's a good thing for us in some ways. The reason that librarians still buy DVDs, as Brenda said, is that like they really love to know that they pay for one thing one time and they have that one thing. Like, I'm going to have these sunglasses until I lose or break them, which is probably going to happen within like 6 weeks. But I know I have them. And another way to know that you buy one film once and for all digitally is the life of file. So the life of file is through New Day. Is there a download option? I forget what happened with the download option. Basically, you pay $500 one time for Waking Dream, and you have the ability to stream that file in perpetuity forever. And whether you actually provide like a physical file for them to download or not, I believe it's still opt-in.
So but you have
it's not
to
required.
Yeah.
So when you say opt-in,
Right.
So what does that mean?
So part of being in the co-op is that there are certain options, like from the menu, right? Like you have to have, there are certain requirements of things you have to have as part of your menu if you are with New Day. But there are other things that if you don't want to do life of file, you can say, no, I'm not, I don't trust people, or I don't want anybody to download my file. I don't want anybody to have access to it forever. So you can opt out.
Because if they download it, then they can duplicate it or if they want.
Right.
So it's the streaming safer in terms of protecting your intellectual property.
Absolutely, definitely. With that said, like I have a friend who just did a theatrical and is just starting to distribute his movie, and he posted on Twitter the other day with a screenshot of Pirate Bay of his film showing that it has not been like pirated one time, and he was like, this is the saddest thing I've seen. Like, I'm waiting for someone to pirate my film. Like, why is nobody pirating my film right now? So yes, you're right. Like, your IP absolutely is more protected, like if people have like encrypted streams. But at the same time, I think there's also an upside to like your film just getting out there in the biggest way possible. And obviously, a big downside if it's used kind of in nefarious purposes. But yeah, the honor system definitely applies for kind of like life of file or whenever you're enabling anyone to kind of download your film for a fee.
Okay, and with the people who have the limited time, like the 14-day or the 1 year, do each of the people get their own separate encryption so that when 14 days comes, that one will end versus someone else's? How do you monitor that?
Yeah, so the license, the link is only live for that specific period of time. Honestly, I'm not sure, like in the back end, like how that works, but it's not each stream, each link is only kind of like valid for that period of time.
And then lastly, why go through New Day versus just doing it ourselves at home? Because I imagine just through New Day, I think part of your model is you have to donate a certain amount
I think we're gonna get to, after this, we're gonna go through, like, dig into New Day more.
But I think you had a question, right?
Yeah, I had a question about, is this your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, cool, thanks. Did you ever have an option to do if someone wanted to screen it at a university and then you lost someone who's gonna advocate for it or something like that? Is that an option or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna talk about that later. Yeah, because yes, it is definitely. Thank you for raising that, but I'm gonna get to it in a bit for sure.
One question about what you got there.
Yeah.
It's relevant to where you are. Why do you have two tabs for what appear to be the same thing? If you have all those educational options on the lower tab, then why have the one for Canopy? Unless that's because that goes specifically to Canopy.
Yeah, so because there is such a big market share of Canopy, people know they have Canopy accounts. Like, there's a certain percentage of people who know that they're purchasing films through Canopy, therefore having like a dedicated link saying like go right there. You can get there through the New Day page. It's just, you need to look for it and kind of process through it. So for ease of distribution, and now now seeing that the majority of educational revenue that I'm receiving is coming through Canopy, like making that as easy as possible for people.
Especially educators or students, if they are used to using Canopy, they're like, oh, maybe this is on Canopy, and then they just go right away. But if it's not, at the very least, not only do they know, but there are also buttons like request this from your librarian. So that also helps us.
So just standard synopsis. Again, kind of like have a educational distribution kind of section here. So these are the same links, just kind of like again. One thing that New Day folks talk a lot about, just in terms of marketing and promo, is activating the allies that Brenda mentioned earlier. And one way to do that is to get quotes from them. So it's like if you have allies who got your back, who know your work, or who just like maybe screen your film and appreciate it, getting people to give you quotes is a really helpful thing in the whole world of educational. And sometimes it's hard to remember and it's hard to kind of nail people down because professors and folks are really busy. But if you can get like I think there are many New Day members who are much better than me at this, and they have like a whole spreadsheet of like quotes from every single kind of person, so that when you do specific marketing campaigns, you can just pick out that quote. Say you want like the quote from like that trainer, or you want a quote from like a leader in the field who's like working on gun violence. Like you want a quote from like whoever it is, and you have like a whole archive essentially of different people talking about how important your work is. So another critical piece, I think for me, it's always a little bit abstract to have metrics and to know kind of like how these things are really connected, but is to have resource material for people who are going to screen your film. So when you're doing outreach, when you're doing marketing, provide free, downloadable. In this case, I have like a dialogue guide to just help people figure out how to talk about these issues, because immigration issues, talking about policy, immigration, immigrants is just a very divisive topic that a lot of folks don't even know, don't have the skills to kind of approach these conversations, create a safe space. So I have a dialogue guide to help with that. And then I can open these up here. So this is a dialogue guide that, that has a lot of information, has ways to, empower audiences, like a bunch of different ideas to plug into whatever kind of group it is.
Did you write this?
Yeah, so I did not personally write this. So this is part of a wider impact campaign, which is kind of, a catch-all for like distributing your film in a way to, that in like a non-traditional kind of way that really like has a campaign focus and connects with educational as well as like community groups, and gets the film out there that's in a way that's not theatrical and that's not streaming. It's just kind of everything else. So this dialogue guide was really helpful in getting audiences to screen the film and to buy the film, and then of course like the more traditional resource is a lesson plan, right? Is like something that a teacher or educator can like open it up and say, yes, this is how this film plugs into this class, or this film plugs into this unit. So we tried to make it really easy to high school. I think you might have said high school is like a good target audience for this film. So we made a lesson plan specifically for grade level 6 to 12, and it basically used, since there are 6 episodes, we just broke it down by episode, knowing that some teachers, like watching a whole thing is 52 minutes long. I mean, a lot of teachers are working with a 45-minute class, so that's not very helpful. Each episode is 9 minutes long, and like you can plug that into any class, right? So there's episode 1 lesson plan. What is an American? How do you plug in that question of what is an American into your class? Like maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. But for educators that is helpful, that'll hopefully pop out. And then we have, a quick summary of the episode, essential questions, materials, an activity. This guide uses like the note catcher Socratic seminar kind of method in all of these. And you watch it, and then you have a debrief, and and there's like an element about critical media literacy, and basically every episode has a different theme. So one.
Is this material available for free, or is it associated with anybody who pays a certain amount?
No. So again, like on my open source tip, like this is all free. Everywhere. Yeah. So.
Any problems with making it ADA compatible? I had this video. I had a classroom supplement, and they said, but it's not ADA compatible, and you go to this Google thing, and they'll tell you, that's the Google thing. The Google thing said it was okay, but they did not. I had too many illustrations.
I don't know. I never had any kind of like ADA or accessibility kind of piece. Never encountered that for the resource materials. Definitely for my films, but not for the resource materials.
They want to read it.
Yeah.
Which to me sounds a little bit funny, because if you're blind, you're not going to be able to see the film.
Mm-hmm.
So if you read a lesson plan about a film that you haven't been able to watch, seems to be a little bit strange.
Well, the film could be audio described, and then, ideally with a quality audio description, blind or low vision viewers will be able to enjoy the film in a different way. But yeah, I guess the ADA accessible study guides are something. Yeah, I haven't had an issue with that, but I'm glad you're bringing it up, because that's something else to put in our budgets for impact if we can, for sure. It's important.
And then so lastly, I haven't. So again, like all these materials, these like cost a lot of money to create, right? So it's like, it's not, in the way that I did it, it cost a lot of money to create, and I was doing a larger impact campaign, which I was raising funds for, and I raised like 70% of the budget of the actual film. I raised again for the impact campaign, and built a team of impact folks, and we did a big campaign and got the film out and did more than 100 screenings, many of which were paid, but some of which weren't, because we raised money mainly from foundations that we already had the funding, so we didn't have to get paid necessarily. And all of these materials really helped engage folks in a lot of different ways. So when you're reaching out to a church community, you might do the dialogue guide. When you're reaching out, obviously, to educators, they're going to include the lesson plans. And a lot of college and university educators use those lesson plans, even though they said, they were designed for grade 6 to 12. We said that specifically just because that was it was designed in a way that it connected with the core curriculum for I forget exactly which state. I know definitely California. The designer was based in Colorado, but a lot of educators want to know like how the better aligned with the core curriculum it is, the easier it's going to be to fit in, right? So if we know that in California public schools in fifth grade or third grade, like they do a unit on like citizenship and like passports, and that's going to be a specific time when this content is like makes sense. And then we wanted people to plan their own events and put their own events together. So we're like, well, people don't really know how to do that. Sometimes folks do, or in general, like, can we create a guide that is literally like, it's an event planning checklist, like 1 to 2 months before you put an event together, 2 weeks before, 1 week before, check boxes of kind of what you need to do to put on a successful event, how to promote your event. And then, all the links to all the stuff and all the episodes. We're all here as well as like a sample social media toolkit. So all this like work was created in kind of a relatively costly way. I mean, the person who designed it is incredibly talented, and I think like gave us an amazing deal. But with that said, you can like create these kind of materials you can create them yourself, or you ideally work with like a professional, like again, like to the allyship. If you're doing academic screenings and you have like professors and people in academia who are, allied with you, they're really good resources to create things like this. Broadcasters, like a lot of times whenever you do a broadcast deal, hey, would you be able to create a discussion guide or a curriculum guide like for this film? I've had a bunch of films on POV, and they created an amazing guide for my first film on POV called Sin País.
I think that's kind of the usual rep. Like almost every PBS project gets some sort of discussion guide.
They'll
right?
provide
Educational
it.
guide.
I don't know. I don't know.
Lately, I feel like it seems like a thing that comes with.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know POV is definitely like very dedicated to like the educational piece, and they've been really supportive. But sometimes like you have to ask. I did like an interactive project that had a web platform and live events and a series of short films, and we got a grant from Tribeca Film Institute, and they funded like the creation of the interactive web platform component, and then and they're like, what else do you need? Like, do you need anything else? I'm like, can you make us an educator's guide? They're like, oh, let me look through. Yeah, sure. And they hired this designer that made this amazing, it's like a book. It was an incredible guide that's like 90 pages long, and was really, really critical in bringing like the project to high school educators specifically. So I think in all of the marketing for whether it's New Day or to other kind of parts of the educational market, it's always like all the stuff is always included, either as attachments, ideally, or links to download. Just kind of like, here's a bunch of resources. It's free. Take what you want and need, and hopefully it kind of works for you. So yeah.
How collaborative is like the lesson plan with, like, are you a part of it, or do you kind of send it off to someone to kind of read?
How to work with the educator on how to kind of fit it into their classes?
Yeah, like the board, the lesson plan, and all the dialogue, just the whole document. Like, are you working on that as well, or would the person who wrote it all out kind of come up with those concepts after watching?
Yeah, it was a pretty it was definitely like a collaborative process. Having like meetings, talking about like what, before any writing was done, like who the target audience was, like how I wanted to see the film in the world, like what work I wanted it to do, what I thought, like what elements of the film and the participants in the film like would connect with different audiences. And then definitely like feedback loop for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, I mean, I'm not like really a professional educator, even though I have taught before, and it's like I'm not like the dialogue guide writer. I mean, is just so amazing at what she does, and that's like her world. So I think being like on the same kind of like synced up to start, and then just kind of check-ins along the way. It worked out. It worked out really well.
The lesson plan change anything about the series, editing, or
No.
like you said, not being an educator, kind of okay, well, we need this piece in order to make this article, did that change anything, just go back to the series and editing?
No, it was already actually finished. So like we made the series and then broadcast and then raised the money for the impact campaign and then kind of made all the guides and everything. I mean, I think one part where I really factored in all the materials is just, like your film best, right? And like usually you're like kind of an expert on whatever the subject matter is in your film. So and then you are also, as you are like when you're editing, in the distribution of it, you're picking out like the different themes of your film or the different through lines or the different conversations that bubble up from your film, and you're focusing on them, right? For working with undocumented community, I'm often like trying to just like combat a bunch of myths and like misinformation and just on the baseline, like clarify like the actual reality of like what's going on in the world, because there's so much noise, a lot of which is like really complex and confusing and gets a lot of people a lot of really bad information. So kind of like debunking myths and stereotypes and assumptions, is a big part of kind of like pushing that part like in the guides and the resources. And I always think it's also a great opportunity to kind of like get at parts of the story that you couldn't fit in your movie. Because there's some elements of the wider story that are maybe going to work really well on screen, and other parts that are just like not going to. In my mind, I'm always like, that's going to be for the discussion guide. Like we can have some really great conversations about that, but it's not going to like visually kind of come across in the film.
Now, how did you find your people to do the resource guides?
I probably sent a message to New Day and was like, hey, who has some great recommendations? That's another awesome part that we'll talk about in a bit. I'm trying to remember how I first got recommended, but it might have actually been through a screening as well. And actually the person who created my guide was kind of like connected to immigrant rights, and like her synagogue like had been involved in immigrant rights movements in line with like the film that I'm actually like working on right now. So there was some connection there. But I will say also, just like before we move on to New Day, on the educational distribution piece, this is like a weird thing, right? It's like a series, it's a short episodes, it's already online. It's not really like a festival film. Like we did a few festivals, but it didn't have that traditional, it's kind of hard to do. It's a digital native project, right? It's like built to be on YouTube and online. So it was a little bit of a different beast, which I knew going into it. And from the get-go knew that, PBS wasn't going to fund the impact campaign and that we needed to raise the money and do it ourselves. So we, from the get-go, while we're in production, like knew that we're going to have to raise the money, put the team together, and then kind of like get screenings kind of lined up from that impact team, and then concurrently did a lot of promotion and marketing to universities and to academia. And this is right on the tail end of when they were just kind of still buying DVDs, maybe like 4 years ago. And for better or worse, like immigration issues and DACA, unfortunately, is still in the news and very pertinent, and is something that a lot of people are aware of, but might not know kind of details about. So to this day, like both kind of DVDs and digitally on Canopy, a little bit less so kind of like digitally through New Day's platform, it remains a film that people want to watch. And whether they know it's on PBS on YouTube or not, like are willing to kind of like pay for and license to bring to their classrooms. And yeah, and just lastly, I want to comment on the question that came up earlier. A big element of that impact campaign was not just to like get the films out there, but really the main component for me was to create a campaign that that provided different opportunities for most affected communities, mainly immigrants and undocumented folks and people in mixed status families, to be able to talk to audiences they wouldn't normally have access to or be able to talk to, and to get paid while they do that, to recognize their time and their worth and their voice. So every single time we had some sort of screening, which there are many of, I would, like 90% of them, we had someone from most affected communities like talking on the panel at the Q&A. A lot of times it was like without me there. And you know, every single time they were like getting a stipend or honorarium for that time. So that was, to me, that was actually like the biggest success, is that there were so many screenings and so many really phenomenal panels with a diversity of folks, because undocumented community is phenomenally diverse in all kinds of different scenarios, coming from many different countries and speaking many different native languages, which the series tries to kind of get at, and that the impact campaign was kind of like a way to to get amplify those voices, as well as like provide every single person in the series was on at least one panel. Some of them, like Dylan on the far left, was on, I don't know, like a dozen. Rossi was also on probably 8 or 9. It really kind of gave everybody in the film like a chance to engage with different audiences and kind of tell more of their stories. Marisol, like, had never, she's on the far right, you didn't see her because she's in episode 2. She'd never been on stage talking about herself or her life, or it was like a totally new experience. And I've known her for like 15 years, and it was amazing to like go to Arizona, to Tucson, in this like really heated, very political, like really kind of like harsh environment, and have her like be on stage talking about her life, undocumented, growing up. It was really amazing. So, yeah.
So, I mean, the obvious, but your decision not to make a traditional documentary a choice because the route you took was the most effective way to audience build, make money, and just push the issues that you feel really passionate about?
I think each film kind of like, for me, I mean, I've been making short films a long time before making this series. So it was just kind of in my toolbox, and there are a bunch of different reasons. I mean, this started right after the Trump administration came into power, and then DACA, there was a huge question. I mean, he ran on like rescinding DACA, taking it away on day one. So nobody knew what was going to happen. There was huge question marks, as there still are today. And so yeah, I think just like the nature of following like multi-character piece, like the episodic nature, and kind of like the timeline that we wanted to create on. Like, we didn't have 5 years to kind of longitudinally follow everybody and see kind of like where they went, but wanted to do it a lot faster.
Yeah. And did your impact campaign start before or after this movie?
Good question. I think while you're making your film, I think it's a really great time to start building those relationships with organizations, and to kind of like start building that network of the people who are going to screen your film. Like, as I mentioned before, like I have, I'm not finished a film I'm making right now that hopefully I'm going to finish in the next 3 to 4 months, but I already have like screenings for it, educational screenings set up for it in like next spring.
Did you hire an outside, like an organization or person to be your impact, to spearhead your impact campaign?
Impact producer, yeah. Actually, I built a team of like 3 people.
So as a team of individuals, it's not like this. When I was researching this, there were like companies that do that.
Yeah.
I ended up hiring a single producer.
Yeah, absolutely. They're both ends. Yeah, they're companies that do impact campaigns. Often you have to pay them like large amounts of money, and then of course like they're impact producers, individuals. Yeah, I hired 3 different impact producers and like built a team and kind of directed that team together. Yeah.
Question if it's appropriate. My film, because it's somewhat verite, I've been contemplating creating some video companion to, instead of a study guide, to use a lot of the interview material that I collected that I didn't use in the film to create sort of a companion for educators. And that seems to raise a whole other thing, because I'm sort of making another film, albeit it might be a shorter, easier film, I don't know. But then how would I, you know, instead of having a study guide, do you do that? Do people do that? Create video companions instead of written companions? It's sort of like extras, DVD extras in a way.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of filmmakers who are doing that kind of like the extras or just kind of tailoring to different, you know, amounts of time. Like for if you only have 60 minutes, if you have like an hour and a half. But as far as that being the only kind of source of study guide, you know, like for a study guide, like without a printed one, I don't know, like a written one. Have you heard of something like that? Just through video extras?
I haven't, no. I think that sounds like a great companion to the study guide as well.
Yeah, that is more work.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can help you because, you know, not everybody has the same amount of time. And I think like there's something to be said about where, you know, viewers kind of habits are moving towards, you know, like younger audiences are getting really used to short bits of information, a lot of like TikTok culture and all that stuff. So sometimes that's a way to introduce something to a class or to a new audience, like smaller bits, little more digestible, like breadcrumbs. And here's more if you want to learn more. This is, you know, this is the extended, you know, option if you want to get more involved. So I think that's actually smart. It gives you more options. And you can have both. You can have both in the same platform, or you can, yeah, just, and then keep track of how that's like, what are people clicking on? And maybe it is that short video that really draws them into your larger piece. Mm-hmm. All right, so so I think we're going to talk a little bit more about this, specifically the New Day Films model, but again, it's going to be kind of like a back and forth with just general educational pricing and markets, and just kind of how a lot of that connects to your impact campaign, your outreach, because you all were talking about like, okay, so you hire a person, and so when do you start? And a lot of that is kind of like this like blurry line, right? Because you have your sort of your outreach, you start building your outreach as you're making the film, like if you're raising funds, like, you know, if you have a crowdfunding campaign, right? If you have, you know, people who keep asking you, when's your film gonna be done? Your participants, organizations you're working on with. So there's that outreach. And then if you do have an impact campaign, you have all that momentum, but we don't really, I don't hear enough about educational distribution being kind of embedded into that, so that you can maximize all that outreach and all the plans you made for your impact campaign. But let's go back to pricing. So we do bring DVDs, again, not because they're super popular, but they're still a thing. And this is very similar to what Theo was showing before on the New Day website. The prices are different depending on who you are selling to, if it's a college, if it's a library, but I guess we already talked a little bit about that. And then the same thing for the streaming licenses. This is data from 2019 to 2020. There was a period, obviously, like 2020 and 2021, there was a big uptick in streaming licenses. Like people were really looking for educational resources remotely. So there was an increase in sales in the educational market, and but that is no longer the case. But people got really creative on how to create events virtually and how to maximize that. So we can, I guess we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I guess we can just move forward.
We're gonna have a link to download.
Okay.
Anything else that you guys mentioned, the possibility of a break or something?
Yes, we can have a break at any time. Yeah.
Yeah.
You like to fast forward the break right now?
Yeah. Well, I think
I think we still have some. Yeah.
maybe finish it. Should we break and then do New Day after the break?
Yeah, definitely. Let's do break right now. We can do break now.
Okay. Cool. So maybe maybe it's just this last slide. Yeah. So these were all, just to clarify, like these are prices for entities to buy the license to stream or buy the physical DVD, right? But in like the like larger financial sustainability perspective of educational distribution, at least for me, like the screening fee or speaking fee, like the fee to show your film either without you or to show your film and to hire you to speak on it, is far greater than like the fee that they'll actually pay to buy your film or license it. So yeah, that always is it always seems to be kind of like a little bit tricky, like odd scenario, and people are like, so what's your fee? And depending on who is asking, there's often a different answer, right? I don't know, like how do you approach it when someone asks you, when they're like, I want to show your film and can you join us to talk about it?
Right. Yeah. No, I think in general, like a lot of people expect Zoom to be kind of like, oh, it's easy. You just like log in and just share a little bit. But I think it's important to obviously like who's asking you, like if there is a budget. I always start with asking like, is there a budget? And then they say, well, very little. How much do you have? Okay, so what about if we, how much time do we have? Because if there is enough anticipation, they can build like a bigger event around it, and they can work with what's another organization on campus who might be interested? What's another department, right? Like maybe someone from Latin American Studies is inviting me to speak, but perhaps there is another group like you were mentioning. There's group like, La Raza, or there's other like Chicanx students groups that are also interested in the film. Maybe there's some money, the provost office, or maybe there is some, what about the librarians? How about feminist studies? And just try to start brainstorming and working with professors, because sometimes they don't know either. You have to assume that they have good intentions, but they really don't know. And the university system is very complicated, and sometimes, especially the lecturers, are not, they don't sometimes know how to go about like getting access to those funds. So, work with the professor, right? Like they usually want to advocate and they want to do the right thing. So yeah, just in general, I think for Zoom, it just really depends on if it's a nonprofit, then it's a different negotiation. Yeah.
I was touring for 3.5 years with my first mental health talk back in 2010, and I didn't bother with the lecturers. I just went straight for the chairs, and I also went straight for the graduate school chairs, not that undergraduate, because everything seemed to trickle down from there, and that seemed to balance the best way of navigating what is a really bureaucratic system and just making the best use of my time. So I would just Google psychology departments in Northern California, or I go for a whole state in Illinois, and it would take hours and hours just to navigate these shitty college websites, just to get the name of the person, But then to get to the person and get a response, I had to write multiple follow-ups and so on. But I always found that they held the strings, the purse strings.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's really smart. And but at the same time, the professors can do that work, because it can be really exhausting to be doing that yourself. So the professors might want to take on that work for you, and in the process they also kind of discover all those pathways And you just kind of have to work with them to find what works for each department, each school.
I think when pricing things out, well, I mean, one, like also traditionally, I think a lot of documentary filmmakers undervalue their work. and you know, we're not that great at, maybe I shouldn't talk about like the royal we as documentary filmmakers, but we're not that great at asking for money or a lot of money to show and screen films, especially films that are like have been a labor of love that like we put our like heart and soul into, and our you know, the people in our films are now like our friends or maybe even our family. And there's something that kind of is conflicting, like asking for a bunch of money to show that and to talk about it. But it is worth that. And these organizations have budgets and money allotted specifically to show movies like ours and to pay us like fair and living wages. So I think depending on the scenario, like sometimes you know that your film is getting scheduled or programmed into like an event, right? And maybe it's like the psychology department is putting together an event. It's at 7 p.m. at some theater on campus. And you know, like when your film is being raised in that way and you're going to be on a panel and there are going to be professors who are going to be experts on the panel talking with you, et cetera, you know, that you should be paid for that and there should be a budget. And I think like sometimes it's hard, but like quoting a price that is high, if they want you, they're going to bring your film and the only thing that can happen is they say, no, we don't have that. Often academia and universities, like Brenda mentioned, like they're piecing it together. So if you tell them your rate is like, it's a $2,000 screening fee and another $1,000 speaking fee, and you need to buy my film, so it's like $3,500 all in, they'll be like, okay, let me get back to you. And then they're gonna call the, you know, the mental health department, and then they're gonna call like another department, and they'll cobble together all these like little piles of funding that universities have from charging their students exorbitant amounts of money to go to their schools, and then they're gonna make it work. So, and the worst thing they could do is be like, hey, I'm really sorry, I know this is your fee, but could we pay you $1,500? And you know, if that's fine with you, then yes. If it's not fine with you, no. But we have a lot of New Day colleagues who like you maybe can like have done touring, and like I've never done this, but they make a lot of money. They make like a sustainable like living wage. Like they make a bunch of money going around the world, screening their films to audiences, engaging in conversations that the films bring up, which is incredible, and I think should be at least an option for every filmmaker that wants to do that. That doesn't work for a lot of people, but it does for some, and that should be like a viable way to continue a sustainable life in which we can continue creating films and not have this like start stop and take a decade to make a film, you know, mainly because like we didn't have the funding to do it.
Yeah, I just want to chip in quickly to underscore what you said, to come from a place of strength. Like I never asked what's your budget. Like that's just not my vocabulary. I just said, what I was doing was I said, if you want me there, my fee is $700, and that includes the DVD, the educational rights, and I also want travel fees, and I want per diem to eat. And it works always. No one ever said no. Now, that was 12 years ago. So the landscape has changed now because everyone has less money and because no one's doing DVDs anymore and we're paying less for the streaming. That's one reason why I came here today. I'm really curious how she can get away with asking because the economy is different and the whole Zoom thing. But I do, the bottom line, I think it's still the same. It's just to say, yes, I'm a professional. You know, I'm not just a little indie artist. I'm an educator too. And this is what I can do for you. And I think if you come from that point, be really clear and say, well, it's not just mental health. It heals the women's studies. It heals this department. So why don't you guys get together? And then if you all chip in, then you can, this is what my fee is. And this is what I'll do for you. You know, I'll do this, I'll do this. I always try and say, no, this is just what I want. This is what I will give you for that fee. And they really seem to respect that.
I have been told, I haven't tried it, that you can ask $3,000, and if they say say, we just don't have that money, and you say something like, I don't want money to get in the way of, something that would be a benefit to us both, what can you do? And then you offer them that. You can say, well, I'm not going to be able to do the Q&A, or I'm not going to be able to bring an expert on, or et cetera, but, we can fit it within the budget that you have.
Mhm.
This is just another way of looking at it. As I say, I haven't tried it, but it's something that is working. It sounds like it works for you, as you said, that you're thinking that $35,000. Because, it costs an awful lot of money to make a film. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's a great framework to kind of like pitch a package, and then say, okay, you don't have the budget, so we can simplify or trim it off. I think all of this is in the context, especially in the world of academia, and it's like these organizations, these businesses are used to hiring consultants, right? And hiring, like what we're providing is this sometimes like really foundational experience for students and professors alike. I mean, you've had this experience, like if you connect with this film, I mean, you don't forget that film, and it's a big deal. And yes, we're artists and we're filmmakers and might get kind of have less kind of cachet, especially in the world of academia, as as like an expert with a PhD coming in to make a more traditional kind of presentation or workshop. But the value that we're providing like to that community cannot be like contained or defined, right? And I think we just need to keep that forefront when we're kind of pitching these large prices that we might think might be like, wow, someone's going to really pay me like $3,000 to show my movie, but what we're providing, I think, is very much worth it.
Yeah, especially now with all these options, like Zoom, you can definitely customize it if you have to. So I think that's a really good approach, and it's more doable now than it was before.
Should we do a short break? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we wanted to just share a little bit about what New Jay is. I know some of you are familiar with New Jay, but it just turned 50 recently, and I think it's the longest one, or one of the longest co-ops, filmmaking co-ops in the world. So we're super proud of that. Filmmakers own it, we run it. We only have one paid staff member who does some of the administrative work, and like it's kind of like the glue that holds everybody together. But filmmakers live everywhere, not just in the US, but they're all over the world. And we democratically, like we make decisions together, from like the suggested pricing that Thea was talking about, right? Like, yes, we have the flexibility to, charge whatever we want to charge for our films, but at the same time, there are certain parameters that are fixed in the co-op just to make sure that everybody gets paid fairly and that we're all kind of on the same page in general. What else? So most of our films are social issue. They're not just documentaries. We also have fiction and experimental films. And so just New Day was, this is a very, very sweet photo from our founders. I don't know if you recognize anybody there.
Yes, well, I saw a Julie Reichert film as a film recently. Mm-hmm. And that's what I heard about New Day.
Yeah, so they're amazing, and it was originally a feminist films co-op, and now we are over 100 filmmakers, active filmmakers.
I think the story goes that since it was founded as a feminist co-op, the story goes that Jim Klein was officially Jay Klein on all like promotion as to not reveal his gender. But it really was created in a time when there were no way that like these films were not going to get out into the world. There were these were revolutionary films made by these incredible female filmmakers and Jim, and And for the first many years of New Day, like they drove around the country with their 16 millimeter films in the back of their car from university to university to university, really, really pioneering kind of what we're doing today.
So, and yeah, a lot of the filmmakers come from arts and activism, but a lot of them are also professors, which is also incredibly helpful because we share that network of contacts, and we know the market, we know the classroom. So that's a huge thing to have in a co-op. Like I said, everything's democratically run, so sometimes that can be a little slow. If we're trying to vote on, changes in pricing or, changes about our website, things like that. Not every little decision has to be voted on, but there is something to say about that, which, on the one hand is great because we know what's going on. We know we have a steering committee. It's all voluntary. Of filmmakers every 2 years, that steering committee changes or half of it changes. And the members of the steering committee are in charge of a team. So we have different teams. We have acquisitions, launch and member services, marketing, equity and representation, finances. Other teams. Anyway, every team has different members working on different projects. From the website to social media, promotions, newsletter, all these other things that if you're doing distribution on your own can become overwhelming in some ways. Because you have to market yourself, you have to do your social media posts, you have to keep up with your your list of vendors, your collaborators, everything. It can be really overwhelming and take away a lot of the joy of just what you're doing. So that is one of the huge aspects about joining New Day, that you have a network of support. You have a lot of wiggle room to craft your own campaign and just put in the hours to market your film, but you also have a network that supports you, and that you can run decisions by and ideas by. It's like, hey, what's the appropriate pricing? Who has a contact in this university? I'm screening this at a film festival. Do you know any professors you can invite? Just having that it just really lifts the weight off your shoulders. But at the same time, you have to do a job to help the co-op. So, so it's kind of like a give and take. Yeah.
I think there's also always somebody who has a film that is thematically connected to yours, or at least very closely adjacent to yours. So promoting in groups or going in together with a group of people to buy an email list, which you haven't really talked all that much about, but there are a lot of different ways to buy email lists or mine your own to send out kind of mass emails to market your films. And Brandon, can you talk about your collaboration with Corey and how you kind of joint kind of or maybe that's part of your...
Sure, yeah, I think it's coming up.
Cool.
But yeah, yeah, and I guess just if people are thinking about joining New Day, these are some of the things to consider. It has to obviously have some sort of clear social issue, at least one, but most films tend to have more than one social issue. Something that you can think, okay, this is going to be a good fit in certain university departments. Doesn't matter the length, but obviously we're looking, nothing too long. Something that's timely, again, that's also relative because a lot of educational films are kind of evergreen. And there has to be a certain quality, not talking heads only, something that's unique in its topic area, and that just Theo and I have films that are about DACA. There's another film about DACA. At least there's 3 or 4 films about DACA in the co-op. But each of them has a different style and it kind of tells a very different, story. And what Theo was mentioning earlier is that you can actually collaborate and make more, share resources and actually make more noise for your films and support the cause. Yeah, you have to have a study guide or a lesson plan. Every single film in New Day has to have that. And most people do have those study guides for free. for all the reasons that Theo was mentioning before. And yeah, different genres are also, any genre is pretty much an option. We have animation as well. So the process, we can go over that really quick. So something that we're trying to be very intentional about is that we want to make sure that the majority of our films eventually are made by historically underrepresented communities in film. So we are especially interested in filmmakers from those communities bringing their films into New Day, or at least like a team, like a key member of the team made that film. But we are not there yet, but that's something that we're intentional about. And there's a monthly webinar for people who are interested where you can ask very, very, very specific questions and meet other filmmakers that are considering to apply. We have on our website, there is a tab where you can find out how to join New Day, and then you have all the options for the upcoming, I think for the next 3 months, so you can sign up to a webinar that fits your schedule. So once you go to the webinar, you get an application and you submit a screener. We have a curatorial committee that's made up of filmmakers who are member owners. That's how we go by member owners. We're all member owners. So, and then they review the application, and you will hear back in about 5 to 7 weeks. And then you go through an interview via Zoom or phone, and then you have 30 days to sign a contract. Our filmmakers, it doesn't matter. Some people already went through the festival circuit, and they still join New Day after a couple of years of not having any activity, or maybe they went to another distributor first. That deal expired, and now they're coming into New Day. Some people are getting ready for their PBS broadcast, and they come into New Day right at the time when that's going to happen. Just have to maximize all the noise for the publicity, and some people do that as part of their impact campaign. So really, there's no right time to apply. As long as your film is about to be done, then you're good to go. And then once you are in New Day, you get paired up with a launch coach. Again, that's what everybody you get. We talk about here is another filmmaker. So we have several coaches who also have their films in New Day, who are also filmmakers, and they just support you as you prepare like everything, all the assets for the website. You just try to decide your pricing as your just everything pretty much sort of New Day. That's more related to the New Day model rather than just something that's outside of the New Day requirements. And then once you have everything ready, your stuff is on the website and you're good to go, then you get paired up with a promo coach. And so they help you whether you're familiar with educational distribution and you already have something ready to go, or you are like, I have no idea, what do I do, how do I send an email blast or a campaign, you get kind of like that support. Again, you get to choose what you do, but you have someone that keeps you accountable and that sets deadlines, so you can get like a checklist. It's just kind of like a buddy that will support you in that process. And you don't have a job in the co-op for the first 6 months to allow you to have enough time to get acquainted with New Day and to make sure that you invest most of all your hours to just getting your film off the ground. And then after those 6 months, then you do join the job bank. So when you join New Day, you have to you have an option to say, okay, I'm really good at marketing, so I think I want to do that, or I can design the newsletter, or whatever you think. You usually recommend people either do something that you want to learn about. This is an opportunity for you to grow, or something that comes really easy for you. Some people say, I might not have enough time. We're talking about the New Day model.
I made a mistake. I was on the wrong side of the street. Did anyone like some pizza? Sorry.
No worries. Where were we? I forgot.
About the job bank.
Oh, yeah.
Job, yeah. So
So you can join a team. There are the teams. digital ops like website and stuff, launch and member services, marketing and promo, finance, office of the chair. That just we have a person who's a chair every 2 years. We pick a new chair, and equity and representation and acquisitions. So the average that we expect people to work per year is 80 hours. Some people maybe go in production and they're like, I'm gonna be in production for like 6 months, so I don't know how many hours I can put. So you might wanna choose to prepare for an event. Like maybe you can support like producing the annual event. We have an annual event where we all get together. So maybe like you pack all your hours into one, season, like a few months or something. So it really depends on each team and the needs and the capacity. But the average is about 80 hours. And we do have that annual meeting where we all get together in the East Coast or the West Coast. And we discuss all new day, like the big decisions about like, changes to our website or changes in the way we do acquisitions or a new platform, streaming platform, things like that. We vote on that, but we also, the steering committee gives a report, an annual report of like the state of the co-op. We share each other's work, and then it's also an opportunity to just like connect as a co-op, right? Because part of the big lure of New Day for a lot of people is just connecting with a bunch of working filmmakers that are also interested in academia and expanding like, the field, and it's just a really nice place to get community in very constantly. Oh, yeah, and when you join New Day too, the contract is for 5 years for educational. And of course, like there's times when people do not, for whatever reason, something happens, they don't sell very well. So there are ways to, if you don't sell enough, there's an option to opt out of your contract after 2 years, I believe, or 3 years. Mm-hmm. But that's usually not what happens. So, great.
Yeah, I could just add, like, just on the community piece. I mean, a lot of New Day filmmakers end up collaborating with each other. Sometimes getting married in that kind of collaboration. A lot of times in making films, like from the simple, like relatively kind of aspect of just hiring each other, just say like, hey, I have a shoot here, can you work for me? To like a one-day shoot, to hiring, an editor to edit their entire film, to actually like co-creating and making films together. Brenda right now is producing a film, or are you co-directing or producing? Producing a film that's being co-directed or directed?
Co-directed.
Co-directed by 2 other New Day member owners and edited by one of them. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of that collaboration going on, and a lot of generational. It's really the only kind of film organization that I'm ever really been part of where there's just where the intergenerationality of it is so pronounced, that there are people who have been making films since the 70s or 60s maybe, and then there are folks who are just joining with their very first film, who are in their maybe late 20s or something like that, and it's really profound, especially kind of year after year after having those kind of like prolonged relationships, and just the hive mind. If you have a question about anything, whether it's about the distribution piece or just the filmmaking piece in general, if you kind of ask the New Day hive mind, you usually get some pretty prompt and amazing responses.
Yeah, I mean, I only have time for yeah, it's just something that we like to bring up, because we have an equity and representation say department.
Like a working group, yeah.
Group. Yeah, and just something that's really important and that we feel like it's really meaningful about educational distribution, and specifically for New Day, is that, there has been a lot of conversations around like racial equity and access in the filmmaking community, right? Like we've all been here about authorship and all these kind of things, but when it comes to educational, it's really an opportunity to, expand beyond like our world of filmmaking and just look into like, the best way to change that system is through education, right? Having access to those universities or those people that are going to be the future educators. How do we bring them like this, these filmmakers into the classrooms that are underrepresented in these spaces? How do we, or bring like, white filmmakers or filmmakers who are non-disabled doing films about disability, things like that, to speak about their allyship and how that has worked in their work as filmmakers, and continue that conversation and bring it into the classroom is really important for us. And just kind of how to advocate for each other. Yeah.
Question, what do you think the percentage of each sale or rental?
Yes. So right now, what's the percentage right now? Or if it's through the New Day site?
Yeah. So the general. So it depends. The percentage that basically like New Day's cut depends on really on kind of how much revenue you're bringing in. So actually, if you sell more, then your percentage that you keep actually goes up. But in general, I mean, it spans. It basically, depending on how much you are selling, depends. Like, basically creates your profit share.
It's not like Canopy where it's per sale.
No.
Because of the nature of the co-op. Yeah, like Dia was saying, this is to support filmmakers who might have a month that was really bad. So if they don't make their sales, they don't have to pay a lot of shares. And if you have plenty, then your shares go up. So all that is like adjusted and available to every filmmaker to see every month. We can get access to those statements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'd say like in general, filmmakers in New Day, it is like you mentioned, like, you're part of this co-op, like you have a job, it's a bunch of work, but with that work comes you getting a vastly larger amount of the revenue that your film is being sold for. Where a traditional educational deal is like usually like 70-30, filmmaker would keep 30, maybe 60-40, but that's probably hard to get. So you give all your film and everything to educational distributor, and then depending on how well they market it and sell it, you would get 30% of that. In New Day, it's usually like at least the opposite. Like the filmmaker would keep, between like 60 to 80% of between 60 to 80% of the profit. And then like New Day, the business would get a cut of like 20 to 40%. So somewhere in that range. And then of course, you have to do your own marketing. You have to pay for that. You have to build your website. You have to do your emails. Like there are definitely costs that, you take on from taking that responsibility. But
yearly what?
Yearly dues. No, is there an annual? If you're classics, I think there's a very small, but no, there's no annual due. Basically, the member, you have to pay a certain amount like per month per film, depending on where your film falls, kind of like on the share ladder. So so every co-op member like basically has dues, like pays a share, and
about royalty.
What's that?
Percentage of the sale.
You have to pay a share. Essentially, like you pay a share per film depending on the sales of your film. So
if that's it, you're not talking about another film.
No. Yeah, but there's no like annual fee or anything like that.
All right, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.